Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it.
Tell me how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, "Great, Barry, a reefer."
Hi, welcome back. It's another episode of the Koala podcast. And this week I was contacted by lawyer Jeffrey O'Brien, who has just joined Husch Blackwell. Regular listeners will know that HB have been doing cannabis law for quite a number of years now. And Jeffrey's just started with them. He is in Minnesota, so there's plenty to talk about. Jeff, welcome to the show. As we were just saying in the preamble, you work for a number of sort of mid-sized firms. What sort of work were you doing for them, and what led you to cannabis?
Well, I've been doing a lot of work over the years, primarily for the last, say, 15, 16 years, Sean, in the alcohol beverage space.
Okay.
And someone reached out to me many years ago when Minnesota was legalizing medical cannabis and had asked for help with their license application. They ultimately decided not to do it, but they said, we figure you'd know how to do it given that you do the alcohol stuff. And at that point, it was like the light bulb went on, and I saw the parallels. Number one, becoming an industry that had arose out of prohibition. And second of all, they're basically very highly regulated industries, both of them. And so there's a lot of parallels between them. And so I've been kind of keeping my eyes on what was happening here. And ultimately, of course, we started here in 22 with the intoxicating hemp, Minnesota being kind of a leader on that in terms of going with a regulatory approach versus the kind of the free reign of the Farm Bill, which is causing some headaches in other states. Minnesota made the decision that, hey, you're going to register and to sell these products, and you can do these things. And ultimately now with the adult use law, they're going to be issuing low potency hemp licenses later this year. So they're actually going to regulate it just like
common sense coming from government,
industry.
from state government. I don't believe it.
Yeah. But part of that grew out of the fact that the hemp beverages have probably saved our brewing industry here in Minnesota. I ask my clients, what percentage of your revenues these days are from hemp beverages, and every single one of them says the same thing, 70%.
It's that high, is it?
So, yeah. So and Minnesota is unique. Of all of the 50 states, we are the only one that allows for on sale or on-site consumption of hemp beverages. So you can sit at your local pub or your little tap room, and if you want to have those, they're coming up with procedures for, okay, you get a wristband, you can only drink these, we can only serve one per whatever, how many minutes or whatever. So they're taking steps to try to.
And do they have steps that you can't mix the two? If you're in a bar, you can't mix the two?
That's what because what's happening with bars is their dram shop liability carriers are telling them, if you're serving both, we won't cover any dram shop claims because we're going to assume it's the hemp beverage, not the alcohol. But for the folks that are actually making the beverages, they've come up with ways to kind of distinguish between alcoholic beverages and hemp beverages. So that's been a big thing. That's how
I've got one other question. It's something that's always interested me about the state and the move from the craft alcohol to craft hemp cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Capital expenditure for these companies. Are they having to buy in a whole lot of new equipment in order to operate in this space and operate them separately under different roofs? It's just a question. Whenever I read, a lot of the articles, there's not much information about this, the nitty gritty.
My understanding, Sean, is essentially what they're brewing is they first of all, it's non-alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
So they figure out a way. They have to, there's their processes for taking the alcohol content down to negligible range. But also, what they're really doing is dumping in this water soluble Delta 9
So
into the
it's a pretty
batch.
simple process, really. It's
Yeah,
soda,
yeah, it's
soda, and dump
every
something in
single
it.
one of them, every single one of them like flipped on and chose to do it. I mean, some of them are doing better than others. The early adapters are doing better. Like one of my brewery clients is a brewery called Modest Brewing in Minneapolis. They have somebody who not only do they are they making these beverages, and they were one of the earliest ones. And it's kind of funny that there's video of our former governor Jesse Ventura at some kind of a cannabis conference, and the very first hemp beverage he ever tasted was Modest Brewing, and it was just he was like, "So this is legal now?" Yes. "And this has THC in it?" "Yes, Governor." Oh, and so he just thought this was like the greatest thing ever. But it was it was their beverage that he tried for the first time. They actually have somebody that's like the director of their THC beverage program. They take it seriously and are trying to do it the right way, not just here, we're going to throw something out there in the marketplace and try to collect some revenue
So
off
it's
of it.
interesting. I mean, because it's very rare you can have a conversation with somebody who understands this beyond, just saying the same standard thing. How are, because there's so many companies competing and it's been, what, 18 months, 2 years now, they've been doing it a bit longer. What what makes the consumer choose one over the other? Is it taste profile stuff? Is it marketing? Is it a combination of a number of things? With alcohol, it's easy because there's everybody knows it. It's been around a long time, and there's lot people understand different types of beers. If we use beer as an example, because they're craft brewers, and
Sure.
it seems to be that they're shoving these drinks up next to beer rather than say spirits. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm really interested as why a consumer chooses one over the other.
I think the marketing thing is part of it. There are certain I have certain clients that have been doing this longer. They have more product out there. They may already have relationships with distributors, so they're getting it to the liquor stores, right? That was one of the big things. The first round when the breweries were allowed to make the hemp beverages, liquor stores couldn't sell them. The year
Yeah,
later, when they legalized adult use cannabis as part of that legislation, they also allowed the liquor stores to sell the hemp beverages. So you see, end caps and things in liquor stores or grocery stores, and certainly those that have a stronger distribution network are getting more market penetration compared to somebody else. And so there's certain brands that we see, no matter what store you go into, it's their
yeah.
beverages. A lot
People
of
just
times, liquor stores
identify
will sell.
with
Yep,
that
they'll sell
type
the
of drink.
gummies and stuff like that at
Yeah,
the store and stuff like that. So yeah, and it's part of marketing, but I think it's also it's kind of dedication to the craft or kind of you believe in that this is the way to go, and you're trying to get your products out there, and you're coming up with flavor profiles. Like one of my clients their brand is called Mini Grown, and a lot of their flavors of the beverage are play off a cocktail. So you get like a Moscow Mule or an old fashioned, or
so it's
mojito.
stuff that people
Uh,
know, but given
Exactly,
a new
exactly. So
buzz,
people,
so to
I think
speak.
people are more likely to, I think people are more likely to try those if they think, oh, this is going to taste like something I'm familiar with.
Yeah. So look, sorry, I digressed a bit there because I was just interested in that sort of nitty gritty stuff. What
Yeah.
what's the state doing now, and how is it leading against other states? Because we know it is. What what can Texas? So Abbott's just sent that legislation back to the House in
Yep.
Texas,
Yep.
and my understanding of him doing that is he actually, wants them just to create something that's a bit more watertight. So it's not like a release for the hemp for human consumption industry, anything but. I could be reading that wrong, but what should he and I think Newsom is a perfect example. If they wanted to take a sensible approach to this, what should they be learning from your state?
Well, I think, the fact that I think Minnesota is certainly unique, and it may stay unique just because of the role. No one was going to take away the low potency hemp in the adult use bill because of how the breweries were basically surviving on it. By that point, you already knew the alcohol industry was struggling. numbers were down. People were shifting consumers are kind of shifting more towards the hemp beverages. So it was seen as we have to do this, right? So there was certainly the strength of the brewing industry in this state helped. But what I've noticed from particularly with like Texas and some of the states where cannabis is still where adult use is still illegal is you get this strange coalition of prohibitionists, alcohol beverage industry, and cannabis industry ganging up on the intoxicating hemp. They all have their own reasons, right? The prohibitionists is backdoor legalization. The alcohol beverage folks are saying they aren't getting regulated. We are. Cannabis kind of the same thing as they aren't getting regulated. They're allowed to do this. We can't, blah, blah, blah. Everybody has their own reasons but they have this weird coalition. We don't have that here. You have, and it's really kind of, it's funny how you've had this kind of, you have the breweries do their hemp thing, and now everybody's getting their licenses, approvals, and finding spaces and getting moving on with their cannabis business. So I guess we'll see in time as those businesses open up, how everybody coexists. And then you throw in the wrinkle of, we're going to have municipal dispensaries. We've got tribal dispensaries. The tribes are going to be able to do stuff off the reservations, all sorts of I would say some unique layers to Minnesota's law. There's never a dull day right now for a cannabis lawyer in Minnesota.
No, well, I speak to Mitchell Chago a few times a year, and the man looks so exhausted. I'm surprised he's still alive sometimes. Keeps you guys very busy. So, do you? It's telling me that the state is getting quite sophisticated. So, in terms of law, are you able to think more seriously about things like IP issues and uh, more complicated areas of law that have got beyond this sort of legalization, not legalization argument that rules the discussion around cannabis and law? Are we moving more into like and yeah, this sort of leads into you moving to HB, more
Yep.
sophisticated legal practice in terms
Yeah.
of the conversation about cannabis and hemp?
Yeah, that's been kind of the approach at Hush, and I joined them August of last year, and it's a big reason why I joined them was because I wanted to be involved with their national cannabis practice. They wanted boots on the ground here in Minnesota. It just worked out. But I definitely think we have more of a holistic approach to cannabis law. There's the regulatory and the licensing aspect, right? And that's an ongoing thing. It shifts from, we've had the shift from, we had the application process and helped clients with that. And then, of course, troubleshooting any issue. Oh, you got to submit this was wrong, resubmit this, all that kind of stuff. You have ongoing compliance issues, just,
Well,
I've,
they'll never end because uh,
no, I've
some parts
managed
of
to build up
science
a.
don't seem to be able to keep up. So compliance is
Well, the key for me is to build up a good working relationship with their general counsel at OCM. So when these issues come up, I can say, okay, the statute says this, your rule says this. What about this question? So we held that issue with some of our social equity applicants that are out trying to raise money. Well, you have to keep the ownership at a certain percentage for 3 years. So it's like, what about a convertible note? What about a safe? And so we get the guidance from them as to you can do this, and you have to you disclose this, you have to get our approval for this. So yeah, so we've kind of shifted into, at this point, we're still handling some of the regulatory compliance and licensing issues, but we're looking out helping, raising capital. I've got some real estate clients that are securing the properties. We're dealing with a lot of zoning issues. All the communities outside of the core Twin Cities are trying to figure out how to weaponize their zoning laws to prevent cultivation businesses, which I'm working on a blog post for our Cannabis Law Now blog that's going to kind of gently explain to these cities how the tribal compacts are going to work, where these tribes could operate businesses off the reservation and ignore state and local zoning laws, so they can either work with a local player, or they can deal with having somebody that doesn't have don't have jurisdiction over. So Those kinds of issues are coming up. The IP stuff is big. Obviously, we still can't get a trademark for anything THC through the PTO, so we're doing, state by state registration strategies. It's always ongoing. There's always something, some angle somewhere where we're able to help those clients with
And
whatever the issue is.
uh, you talked about the regulators. I try and follow as many regulators as I can from a distance. What are your regulators like in your state? Because to be honest, I don't hear much from them, which suggests to me they're quite efficient.
Well, they're temporary is part of the problem. I mean, we still have an interim. We're on our third or fourth interim director. He's very
That's
good right
right.
now.
Now yeah, you're reminding me. Yes.
We have the general counsel is still interim general counsel. They've had staff borrowed from other agencies, so there has been some kind of uncertainty in that regard. But I will say, in working through issues, that aside, they're getting their sea legs. They're figuring out ways to solve problems. I asked a question one time and said, you know what, you're about the third or fourth person this week that's asked us this. We're going to put out formal guidance. Wait about a week, we'll have an answer. So they're understanding that, I don't know when anybody is going to be made permanent, but they certainly are figuring things out, and they're also doing a lot of education. They're out in
Well, I was about to
in
say,
the
and are they
community.
educating their legislators? Because that's the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, but you can, our the interim director Eric Tauble, I don't know, he's probably speaking at least once a week somewhere to some group. And if there's not him, it's some other OCM folks. I was at a thing 2 weeks ago. It was some an OCM representative. They had rolled out the testing and analysis guidelines, and so she was doing a presentation on that. So there's no shortage of education right now as to how the department's working, how the law is supposed to work, and giving guidance to the folks that are still out there. A lot of them are still in that phase where they're chasing final approval. What they got when they got approved, they got preliminary approval. Now they got to go out, secure funds, find a site, come back, get final approval before they can get their business launched.
Now, another question. I don't know whether you're allowed to say this with a HB hat on or whether you just say it with the Jeff hat on. Uh, Federal and just the ongoing can kicking that seems to be no different under this administration as it was with the last. I mean, as a practice that's now been around doing this for over a decade, I think it's nigh on a decade now, isn't it?
Hmm.
Do you do you find yourself just ignoring what's coming out of DC and just getting on with the business? Obviously, being aware of what is or isn't happening. I mean, it's interesting to know how a bigger law firm feels about this because whenever something is introduced as either an idea or a draft, it still gets played around, knocked back, then disappears. Then somebody else pops up with the same idea 8 months later saying it's their idea. And, we know how this administration works. I presume if any decisions are made, it comes from some point from the top, whether it's a yay or nay, but it just sits there on the tightrope in the meantime. I mean, do you even think about it?
It's always something in the back of your mind, and certainly for me, practicing. No, I practice in multiple states. I'm admitted in 5 different states, one of them
Okay.
being the state of Wisconsin, which has no
No,
medical
yeah,
or
nothing at
adult
all.
use,
Yeah.
right? So obviously, a change at the federal level would have a significant impact on a state like that versus Minnesota that already has their whole system all set up, right? But in terms of, I mean, if I had to predict, I mean, the last administration took it, said they were going to reschedule it, and it just happened to be conveniently before a midterm election, and they never finished it, right? I've had some people privately say if it doesn't happen during this 4 years, it may never happen because I don't know that you've seen an administration that is as at odds with the pharmaceutical industry or certain other players as this one. You've got Secretary Kennedy at HHS
Yep.
that has in the past announced his support for legalization. I hear chatter about supposedly the president tells somebody that rescheduling is going to happen.
But that's I mean,
I
but there's so much chatter. I think it's
You
white noise.
never know. This is somebody that could wake up one day and decide, well, the way I'm going to get young voters out to the midterms to vote for my party is to reschedule cannabis. He could do that. I mean, that's just there's but I don't see though any sort of movement amongst the states to try to push the feds into a position. Like I've always said, I don't understand why the attorneys general in the states which have legalized cannabis, certainly the great majority that have legalized medical cannabis, couldn't get together and bring an action against the federal government under the 14th Amendment, saying we have made a determination that there is medical benefit for this plant, the federal government standing in the way of that, and you have a U.S. Supreme Court that loves to kick issues back to the states and let them decide individually. I don't understand why there hasn't an attorney general that has picked up the cudgel on that. The other issue in terms of the Safer Banking Act, you've got a
Yeah, well, we just had
situation.
another. Didn't we have somebody just pick it up again recently? Then it gets shot down within the same.
Yeah, but
Something.
the argument I say is, for a party that's in charge that is all about federalism, you're standing in the way of an industry that the states have determined to be legal under federalism principles. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I think here's my prediction, Sean. And I come from a state here for many years where you couldn't buy liquor in a liquor store on Sundays because they were closed. And eventually the legislature just said, I'm tired of hearing about it. Let's just get done with it, legalize it so we can get on to other things. I think we may end up getting, you get so many times with the
The
Banking Act
tipping. You
that
just
comes
reached a
up.
tipping point, and a
You
few
reach a
people
point where
make
they
a
just said, I don't
decision.
want to deal with it anymore. Let's
Yeah.
just legalize it, reschedule it, and get on with something else. That's probably the best shot that those of us that would like to see. And there's some that would rather leave it as it is, leave it at the state level, not at the federal level, and have
Well,
the
I
feds
mean,
get it.
it sort of leads to my next question. Again, if you're a law firm, you're not just thinking within your national boundaries, but there's transnational business to be done. And the
Yeah.
US is
Well,
sort of shooting
we
itself
look
in
at
the
it this
foot
way.
there, isn't it?
We look at it this way. We're a law firm. We play within the boundaries of what we have right now. We certainly keep our ear to the, we don't get involved so much on the legislative side, but we certainly keep our ears to the ground as to changes so that we can react to them and pivot for our clients when necessary.
Well, Jeff, I think that's really, as a speaking as a law firm, that's probably a good way to finish the podcast. And thank you very much for educating me a bit more on Minnesota, because it's rare that I get to speak to somebody from the state. But you do seem to have a fairly sort of sensible head on your